Hey guys, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I have a show and tell for you guys on this unique prototype watch from Ardor Forge. So join me today and find out my initial thoughts on this unique field style watch inspired by the Rothrock Forest in Pennsylvania. So like I mentioned, this is a show and tell of a prototype watch, so this is not going to be a full review. This watch will be sent on to another YouTuber for them to take a look at and also give their thoughts. But I wanted to give you guys my first impressions on this watch from Ardor Forge. This model here is going to be called the Rothrock, and there's going to be a variety of different colors available when these are released. This will be a Kickstarter, guys, so if this watch does interest you at all, if you like the design of this unique timepiece, definitely be on the lookout for the launch of the Kickstarter, which I believe will be in March here of 2020, so in about 2 or 3 weeks the Kickstarter should be live. So if you are interested in this watch, definitely take advantage of that Kickstarter because there will be a early bird price, and from what I've heard from the owner of this company, the early bird price will be $300. So at that price, I think it's a pretty solid deal. Taking a look at the specs here, you'll see that the case diameter on this watch is 42 millimeters. Lug to lug is going to be 50 millimeters. Lug width here for your straps and bands, 22 millimeters. Case thickness is 12 millimeters, and the weight of this watch on this canvas strap is 104 grams. The watch also features a sapphire crystal here on the front, as well as a sapphire crystal on the display case back, which is nice. The water resistance here is listed at 100 meters, which is fine because this is not a dive watch here, this is a field style watch. The movement inside of here is the Seiko NH35. I'm sure everyone out there is familiar with that movement. It's a great movement, particularly in this price point. So I wanted to talk about some of the unique features that this watch does have. So one of the coolest things about this watch is the actual finish that's applied to the case. So you can see as I bring this watch up a little closer to the camera here for you guys, you can see that unique sand-like texture on the case. It definitely gives this watch a very unique look. It's something that I haven't seen before with all the watches I've taken a look at. So I have to admit that this finish is quite impressive. Although I will say that this finish style is going to be a bit polarizing. You're either going to love it or hate it. I tend to lean more toward the love it side of that spectrum, but I can definitely understand that there's going to be plenty of people that aren't a big fan of this finish style. Another unique feature of this watch here is that it does make use of some oak wooden inserts and inlays. So you can see that the rehault here is actually made out of wood. That is a piece of oak, so that's another unique touch that I think is quite impressive on this timepiece. And down here at the crown at 4 o'clock, you can see that there's another insert of oak right there. Now, in my opinion, that particular inlay is a bit gimmicky, and I'm not really a big fan of that. But I will also mention that this company here is going to have versions that have the wood inlays as well as ones that don't have any wood. So if you find that these wooden inserts aren't to your style, you can certainly order the exact same model without the wooden inserts. And finally, as I flip the watch over, you can see that the rotor has a wooden veneer insert applied over the top of the rotor. Now that piece there is not actual oak, it's basically a vinyl overlay. And again, just like the insert on the crown, this veneer over the top of the rotor is a bit gimmicky in my opinion, and I'm personally not a fan of it. So if I did order one of these watches, I would definitely go for the non-wooden versions. The dial on this watch is easy to read, which is a good thing since it's a field style watch. You can see that the hour markings are all numerals, which makes this watch very easy to read the time at a quick glance. But I will mention that there's something about the dial that I'm not a big fan of. To me, it has sort of a cheap feel, if that makes sense. So it might just be that the combination of the logo and the type of printing that they did on the dial just comes across kind of flat. So I think if they come out with a version 2 of this watch, maybe they should look into adding a bit more depth to the dial just to give it a little more character. The watch will come with this supplied canvas strap. You can see that the construction of this strap is excellent, but to me it's not the most comfortable of straps. I've never been a big fan of canvas style straps because they're always a bit thick and they don't really conform to the wrist very well. I'm sure it would break in a little bit, but to me this watch here would look a lot better on a leather strap. And Ardor Forge are offering a whole ring leather strap for a upcharge of $45. So I would definitely suggest, if you pick one of these watches up, to factor purchasing one of the whole ring leather straps just for comfort, as I really do feel it will add to the wearability of this watch and the comfort on wrist. And there will be some other color variations of this watch available, so you can see those on your screen right now. I definitely suggest you head over to the website and browse through the different color variations. If I had to pick, I would say either the black variant here or the blue dial variant would be the ones that stand out the most to me. And another thing I'd like to mention is that Ardor Forge are committed to conservation, so a portion of the sales of these watches will go towards conservation efforts. Now, I don't know how much or what portion will be going toward the conservation, but it is commendable that they are doing that, and I definitely wanted to mention that to you guys. So to wrap this video up, we'll talk about some of the positives and negatives. So the positives are going to be the unique design of this watch. So we do have that sand cast texture on the case here, which is impressive, and it's something I do think is quite unique, and that really helps separate this watch and watch company from the masses of micro brand watches out there. The specs on this watch are also a positive, so we already talked about the sapphire crystal on the front and also on the display case back. So if you do wear this watch into the outdoors, doing some hiking or camping or anything like that, you don't have to worry about really scratching the crystal. So really like that they decided to include sapphire crystals on the front and back of this watch. As for the negatives, I have a few I would like to mention. So first off, I'm not a big fan of the wooden inlays and inserts. I already mentioned I think it is kind of gimmicky. The good news is you are able to get non-oak versions, but to me, these things just kind of make the watch look cheap. So not a big fan of that, although I do understand why the owner decided to include them, because this watch is named after a state forest. But in the end, I think that the wooden inserts really aren't my thing, and I'm not a fan of them. The strap too is also a negative. I already mentioned some of these things, but it just doesn't conform to the wrist very well, and I don't like these grommets being spaced so far apart, so it's difficult to get the watch properly sized on your wrist. So you're either going to have it too tight or too loose. It would have been better to have smaller grommets and bring the distance between those grommets close together, that way you can really dial in the strap. And like I mentioned, the dial looks a bit cheap in my opinion. Now, I think some of the other dial colors would probably look a little better, particularly the black and blue dial. It's just that this green dial here, with the type of printing they use, just looks a bit flat and cheap in my opinion. And the last negative here I'll mention is the dimensions on this timepiece. Now, this is of course a very subjective opinion, but to me the dimensions are just too large for this style of watch. The case diameter being 42 is a bit on the large size in my opinion. I think this watch would have been so much better with a 40mm case diameter. Also, the lug-to-lug being at 50mm, again that's a bit big in my opinion. Would have been much better with a 47 or 48mm lug-to-lug. So in the end here, Ardor Forge have definitely created a unique and cool looking timepiece. So if this watch design does interest you at all, you should definitely keep an eye out for the Kickstarter page, which should be going live in about a month. Guys, if you have any questions or comments on this timepiece, leave them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. And guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all take care.